Welcome to another edition of Ranking the Songs here on Rock Show Critique. And as you can see, I got my special guest here, Mr. Davey Cretin. Welcome.
Thank you for having me back, Joey.
Yeah, it's been a little while, but
It
this is
has.
this is gonna be a good one, man. I've been looking forward for this for a couple weeks now, and like every day leading up to this one. It's just today's just been amazing because I found an old concert online on YouTube that I got to see with who starring our special guest here, none other than Mr. Robert Plant, who we're going to
Yes.
rank the songs, and we're only doing his solo career. We did say you could add in, whatever, as long as it was not Led Zeppelin, pretty much. If you wanted to, you could. Um, I think I did stick all to the solo stuff from all of his regular solo albums. But we'll see what you come up with. Always throwing us the curveball.
Yes.
So how did you get into the Plant solo catalog? I mean, where did you come in along the way?
Well, when I was a younger kid, my late friend Joel, and I were huge Led Zeppelin fans. So, right when we found out that he was going to release a solo album in 1982, we were right there. And I remember hearing on the radio Burning Down One Side, the first single. That's the first song anyone heard from Plant solo. That was the first single from the album, from Pictures at 11 in 1982. And
Yeah.
then as the records came out, I would hear them in the record stores I worked at. We played them a lot. And even his later albums are good. They're very different. They're a little more world music, more adult alternative, a little more mellow, less rock, more finesse. But he's had a very good solo career. I've heard all the albums. I like them all. I would say there's not a dud amongst them. Well, maybe one, but we'll talk about that as we go.
Okay. All right. So we're gonna do the usual countdown here, top 10 tunes. We'll go in back and forth in two, starting with 10 and 9. At the end, we'll get some honorable mentions in there, which we could probably list 100 songs, but we're gonna try to keep it to three.
I have three.
And yeah, why don't you start us off here with the ranking here, number 10.
Okay, my number 10 represents something in Robert Plant's solo career. It represents all the B-sides and unreleased songs. They were non-album tracks, and a lot of them have since been put on the 2 CD collection, 66 to Timbuktu, which is out of print and hard to find. It's not even on the streaming services or the internet, representing the B-sides of singles. And this one comes in at 4 minutes and 42 seconds. It was the American B-side to Big Log. It was not the European B-side to Big Log. And this was a big radio song here in New York City proper, on FM rock radio. It hit number 12 on the Billboard mainstream rock chart. And I'm talking about the song Far Post. That is my number 10 song, written by Robert Plant, guitarist at the time Robbie Blunt, and keyboard player at the time Jez Woodruff. And I wrote down this is a melodic little ditty that's buoyant, bouncy, and upbeat. And the guitar work of Robbie Blunt and the piano work by Jez make this song very special to me. And of course, the great Philly cheesesteak himself, Phil Collins on drums. And he adds some nice fills, strokes, and china work to the proceedings. It's got a great catchy chorus, fades out a little too soon. I wish it was a little bit longer. And I like giving bonus points here for Robbie Blunt's whammy bar action, the way he bends the notes. Really good the way he does that. Excellent song, Far Post. If you don't know it, check it out. Moving on to my number 9. This is a deep album track written by Robert Plant and Chris Blackwell, who was the drummer, and also he played some guitars on the records. Little over 5 minutes long, from 1990's Manic Nirvana album. Tie Dye on the Highway is my number 9. This reached number 6 on the Billboard mainstream rock chart. I wrote down it's an exquisite, deep album track. It's an ode to Woodstock and the Woodstock generation. And it starts out with like a synth bed, a keyboard bed, And Robert Plant uses Wavy Gravy's quote at the start of the song, where and his voice cracks. It's so good. He says, "What we have here is," and he does the quote. It's really good. Right before Doug Boyle's groovy guitar riff comes in, and the song is bathed in atmosphere and patchouli oil, because this is a throwback to the 60s. I love the cool middle section with the distorted guitars. There's a bit of harmonica. There's no credit that I found for it, but it's got to be Plant because he played harmonica in Zeppelin occasionally, especially on one of my favorite Zeppelin songs, Nobody's Fault But Mine. He does some great harmonica work there. And it's another ear candy chorus here for Tie Dye on the Highway. So my number 9, Tie Dye on the Highway. Number 10, Far Post, to represent all his B-sides throughout his solo career.
All right. Wow, we're really getting into the deep stuff early here.
Yeah.
All right, well, my number 10 is gonna keep the deep theme going here. I've got a track that kind of hides on an album, and we're talking about sixes and sevens from the much maligned Shaken and Stirred.
I use that, excuse me for a second, but I use that exact phrase in my notes. Much maligned. Oh, that's so funny.
Well, I think that
Sorry.
album, it does definitely compared to the first two, it's a far left turn out of nowhere for the most
Mm-hmm.
part. I mean, but sixes and sevens is one of the songs on there that's not really like an experimental, doesn't have keyboards really. It's more of a rock driven song. And I think that's why I like it so much, just because it
Yep.
has that rock feel. And it hides because it hides at the end of the album. It's the last track on the album, and it's the longest song on the album, which is pretty cool. And it did reach number 18 on that famous chart you brought up, the US mainstream. So that's what I've got for my number 10.
If I could just add one thing,
Yeah.
that was one of the 3 tracks I remember hearing on radio at the time.
Yeah, we might have had a smidge playback on it, but not too much, unfortunately. Problem with us is right around the time that album came out, we lost our rock station, and then another
Yeah.
station that was playing a little bit more commercial stuff became our rock station, which is maybe why where I heard it, I would assume. That's probably where I heard the song once or twice, but it wasn't played much here at all, unfortunately. But nevertheless, for it to make the top 10, it definitely must have left an imprint on me because that's where I've got it, number 10. So that's number 9 for me. We're going to go down to what I call a hidden gem from the Principle of Moments, his second album. I'm pulling up Horizontal Departure, another rare tune that doesn't get no love these days. Never
Mm-hmm.
got any airplay here, but it has that very upbeat tone, and to me, it's a very entertaining song. And it's weird because I used to gravitate towards the ones that got the radio airplay on that album, you know, and then I would say over the last 2 years, I really, really started. This song really grabbed my attention for whatever reason, and grabbed my attention enough here to make me pick it as my number 9. I don't think anybody else in the world would probably have this song on their list, but here it is on my number 9 list, Horizontal Departure.
Nice deep tracks to start off with.
Both of us.
Yeah, really. Very cool. Give the people something to check out, to
Yeah.
listen to. Moving on to my number 8,
Mhm.
and I'm going to slightly piggyback on you on your number 10 choice from the Shaken and Stirred album, 1985, written by Robert Plant and keyboard player at the time, Jez Woodruff. 4 minutes and 44 seconds. And this was the big, big radio hit, at least here in the city, New York City over here. Little by little, at 4 minutes and 44 seconds, it hit number 83 in the UK, number 83 in Australia, number 28 in New Zealand, number 36 here. It was a top 40 hit, and number 1 on the mainstream rock chart. It was also featured in an episode of Miami Vice called Junk Love. And here's where I wrote it down: from a much maligned album with a good cause, I put, comes this gem. The album is labeled post punk and new wave. And to me, this is the most rock song on it. And I put rock song in quotes. Paul Martinez has some nimble bass playing throughout the song, and drummer Richie Hayward, who played with Little Feat, co-founding member of Little Feat, lays down a really tight groove on this song. Jez's keyboards are prominent throughout, and they're catchy on the whole song. And Blunt's guitars could still be heard. That's what I like about it. As you said, for your choice, which I said was played on rock radio because it's a rock song, this you get Robbie Blunt's guitars. It's my favorite track from Shaken and Stirred, and I must add that Robert Plant's vocals are excellent on this song, little by little, and I like that catchy doodle-doodle-doot, doot, doodle-doodle-doot keyboard part from Jez Woodruff. Excellent. So Little by Little is my number 8. Moving on a bit later in his career, moving to the 1990s, written by Plant, Chris Blackwell, Charlie Jones on bass, Doug Boyle on guitar, Phil Johnstone on keyboards, from 1993's Fate of Nations, a little under 5 minutes, 29 palms. 21 in the UK, 79 in Australia, number 11 in Canada, number 20 in New Zealand. New Zealand loves Percy. They love their Robert Plant. Number 28 in Sweden, bubbling under in the US at number 111. But it did hit number 4 on the US Billboard mainstream rock chart. So it was big song, bigly song on New York rock radio. This song features the late Kevin McMichael on guitars from Cutting Crew. And also, so rest in peace, Kevin McMichael, really good guitar player. And Doug Boyle plays guitar. And to me, their guitar work makes this song pop. Really good song. And same with Plant's vocals here. And he also does backing vocals, harmony vocals. The vocals and the guitars make this song, to me, insanely catchy chorus filled with a lot of ear candy. And it always makes me want to sing along. I love singing along to 29 Palms. So my number 7, 29 Palms from Fate of Nations. Number 8, Little by Little from Shaken and Stirred.
Nice. Yeah, that song was on my long list initially, but sadly, yeah, it's a great song. I love it. I do love it. I mean, there's about 40 songs that I love, but obviously we had to narrow it down to 10. But that's definitely one of the ones that I always liked. Always definitely stands out on that album for sure. Awesome choices. All right, well, we're really rocking
Thank
it
you.
out here for sure. All right, so my number 8 is going to come from the 1990 release, Manic Nirvana. And we are going with none other than the great track Watching You, which is actually
Ooh.
the closing track on the album. But incidentally, though, this is the song that actually opened up the tour for the Manic Nirvana tour. He comes out there with these scarves on these spinning racks on the end of the stage, and then all of a sudden the music kicks in, and this song just blew up. That's where I first really fell in love with it because you got to remember at the time, maybe I heard about 2 or 3 songs off the radio before seeing the tour. And seeing the tour, obviously, he played a good handful of songs from the album on the tour. So
Mhm.
watching you was one of those kind of ones that hit on me until I got to see it live, performed live, and ever since then, man, I've been a big fan of this song. I just love that song. I love the vocal. I love how it's like it's a great vocal on it, and of course the guitar playing on here is unbelievable. I believe that's Mr. Doug Boyle, who played on the Now and Zen album as well.
Yeah.
And these guys were good. They only made like 2 full albums together, and then they kind of had a couple holdovers for the Fate of Nations album. That was a weird one. I didn't understand that whole, what happened at that point in time of the band. Because I figured those guys would have kept the same band together again and made a new one, but they did keep Phil Johnstone around because I remember he was on the tour for Fate of Nations. But then none of the other guys, I don't believe, were there except maybe Charlie Jones, who I guess he wasn't he like a relation to Robert Plant? Charlie
I think
Jones.
he married one of Plant's daughters.
Yeah, yeah. But it's just weird how all those guys were no longer in the band anymore, and I think that's maybe why I don't like Fate of Nations as much as I probably would have if he kept the cast together. I don't know, but getting back to watching you, yeah, I just love that song, and just a great song. Can't say enough about it. And that's gonna take me down to my number seven, and we are going back to Now and Zen for Heaven Knows, which is an unbelievable song. I remember the first time I heard it, I knew right away that Now and Zen was going to be a big hit. I just knew it right off the bat. And obviously, Heaven Knows did reach number one on the mainstream charts there. And yeah, just love this song. The keyboards, the phrasing of Plant, the lyrics. It's got so much going on in it, and I just never gotten sick of this song. It's just one of those ones that used to get played a lot around that period of time,
Oh yeah.
you know. I'm just surprised it never made the top 40. It didn't even crack the top 100. It was kind of odd because I used to hear that song all the time, but I guess it was more of an AOR cut than it
Yep.
was, as a regular pop over. And it's weird because it does have a little bit of a pop to it, poppy, and a more commercial tone to it in a way. Yet it just never caught on for some reason for pop radio, which I guess it's a good thing because then it probably would have gotten overplayed to death, and then I maybe wouldn't like it as much. But another interesting note about that song is it does feature an amazing solo by none other than James Patrick Page, who came on
Uncle
board.
Sloppy himself,
Yeah,
Jimmy Page.
yep, he played on two tracks on the Now and Zen album. That was obviously the first single from the album, and there was a few more released down the road there, which I'm sure somebody will be talking about soon. But yeah, I overall, yeah, just some great songs. So watching you, number eight, number seven, Heaven Knows. What you got for your next group here?
Number 6, written by Robert Plant and Robbie Blunt. 7 minutes and 45 seconds long. Longest song on my list. It hit number 19 on the Billboard Mainstream Rock Chart in 1982 from Pictures at 11. I'm talking about Slow Dancer, an epic song. A monster jam reminiscent of Zeppelin's Kashmir and Rainbow's Stargazer. But what do you expect? Because who was on the drum kit? Cozy Powell himself. You get a mint vocal turn from Plant on lead and backing vocals. Robbie Blunt's guitar playing here, to me, recalls Jimmy Page's playing because the debut album, Pictures at 11, from Plant, is his most explosive and Zeppelin-esque platter I have written down. The Golden God is present and accounted
Hmm.
for. Jez has some sterling synth playing as well on this song, and Cozy Powell brings the thunder. This track is a total banger. Plant knew what he wanted, so he got one of the best behind the kit, Mr. Cozy Powell, and this song just makes me want to air drum along. And just those thundering drums of Cozy Powell. Excellent song. Really great deep track, Slow Dancer. And I do remember this getting played on rock radio here in New York City. Moving on to my number 5, which is oddly enough, which I didn't plan this, 5 minutes in length, written by Robert Plant and Phil Johnstone from 1988's Now and Zen album, Ship of Fools.
Mhm.
Number 76 in the UK, number 10 in New Zealand. I told you they like Plant in New Zealand. Number 84 in the US. Surprised it didn't go higher, like you said before. But number 3 on the rock charts, the Billboard Mainstream Rock Chart, number 3.
Mhm.
He played this at the Atlantic Records 40th anniversary concert with a few other songs in 1988. And it was used in the final 2 episodes of Miami Vice called Free Fall. It's a beautiful melodic masterpiece. Phil Johnstone lays down a perfect bed of keyboards for Doug Boyle's guitar acrobatics on top. And don't discount drummer Chris Blackwell's deft percussion work here as well. especially his tub thumping at 148 to bring the more upbeat part of the song in. 245, he has some nice drum work. And my favorite part, sort of the ending of the main body of the song before the outro at 355, he goes pow on the cymbals. Great drum work there. Love his drum work on this song. And Phil Johnstone's piano plinking throughout the song is the icing on the cake to me. This is a very special song in Plant's catalog, and this was played on rock radio. And I always remember loving when I heard it when we played it in the record store. So Slow Dancer, number 6, Ship of Fools, my number 5.
All right, very good. Yeah, some great choices there. Man, oh man, and what song isn't a great choice with Robert Plant?
Exactly.
All right. That was your 5 and 6. I'm going to give you my number 6, and my number 6 is probably going to take the cake as the rarest song on the countdown here. I imagine, at least for me, I did not imagine in a million years that this song would be on my list. But the more I listened to it, the more I fell in love with it, more so than ever. We're going to go back to 1990, that great album Manic Nirvana, for a song that never got no airplay, but it was a B-side of a single, believe it or not. We're talking about I Cried, B-side of The Hurting Kind. And man, what a great song. Just love this song. The playing by Doug Boyle on here, totally different from the Now and Zen album. You know, he seemed like more like a hired gun, a blazing solos on that Now and Zen album, and then he comes on this album, and he's a lot more all over the board as far as the type of music that he plays. Because Manic Nirvana is definitely a good. Seems like that album has more variety on it, than opposed to Now and Zen. Now and Zen is more of a rock album. Um, I would say Manic Nirvana, he Plant picked up the pace a little bit and expanded more, delve into other areas more experimental, perhaps. Like you mentioned, a good song for that example was that Tie Dye on the Highway.
Yep.
Um, but I Cried, I fit in that same kind of mode. I just love this song, and that's what I got here at my number 6. And number 5, I've got the song you mentioned earlier on today as the first song that anybody ever heard off Robert Plant's solo album. We're talking obviously about From Pictures at 11, Burning Down One Side. And obviously that's the most popular track from the album. And it was a great song on AOR stations. You would still hear this one. A lot of times I do hear it on some of the Sirius FM channels, like the classic Rewind there. They play it every once
Cool.
in a while. Peaked at number 64 on the regular chart, and then it did hit number 3 on the mainstream rock charts. But this was the song that obviously, helped break Pictures at 11. Phil Collins on drums, and like you said, whatchamacallit played on a couple tracks on that album as well, Mr. Cozy Powell. So he had a good, really good, solid lineup on his first couple albums there, because obviously Phil Collins did stay on and play the majority of the album for the Principle of Moments. And yeah, this song is definitely, it's the closest thing next to Slow Dancer in that Zeppelin mode. Those are the two songs that I feel that
Yeah.
really are the songs that are closest to Zeppelin here. And that's what I got there for my number 5, Burning Down One Side.
Good choices, Joey. Moving on to my number 4, 4.5 minute song written by Plant, bassist Charlie Jones at the time, guitar player Doug Boyle from 1990. Again, the Manic Nirvana album. 4.5 minutes. I'm going with the semi-title track, Dag the Giblets. I love this semi-title track called Nirvana,
Wow.
simply Nirvana. This is a rave up of a song. Percy again is in Golden God form here. Doug Boyle's guitar work shimmers, snakes, and shakes the foundation, as does Chris Blackwell's drum work here. I love that 20-second intro with the guitar riffing and then the drums build up and Plant
Hmm.
goes, let's go. And the song just kicks off. Really excellent song. The song has some great build-ups where the song everything drops out. You just hear Plant's vocals, multi-track. Nirvana. Love that part of the song, and they do that a bunch of times. And that sends me to Nirvana. Another choice deep track, no chart action. This was not released as a single. I don't remember hearing it on the radio, but whenever we
Yeah.
played the CD at the store, this song, Nirvana, always stood out to me. Highly recommended as a deep track. Moving on to my number three, more of a big hit song in Plant's solo catalog. Little over 5 minutes, written by Plant Blunt and bass player at the time, Paul Martinez, from The Principle of Moments, 1983. In the Mood. I'm in the mood for a melody. Number 87 on the UK charts, number 37 in Australia, 24 again in New Zealand, big chart placement. Number 39 in America squeaked into the top 40. And number 4 on the US mainstream rock chart. The word here is atmosphere. It's all about the atmosphere. Jez's keyboards are foundational to Robbie Blunt's flights of fancy on the guitar, as are Phil Collins' drum work, and Martinez's bass work. The rhythm section propels the song forward. Blunt's solos here are incredibly tasty and melodic, and the backing vocals are really good on this song from Robert Plant, John David, and Ray Martinez, probably no relation to bass player Paul Martinez. So I love this song. In the Mood is my number three, very melodic, wonderful song. And Nirvana, the hard rocking track Nirvana, my number four.
All right. Very good. All right. Wow, we're really pulling out all the stops here for sure, man. What a good variety of music here from this amazing artist here. No doubt.
Definitely.
All right. Well, I hope I'm going to keep the trend rolling here for us. I'm going with my number four. I'm going to dig back to the debut Pictures at 11 for the ballad Moonlight in Samosa.
Ooh, nice
Love
one.
love this song. A dramatic song that features some excellent work by Mr. Robbie Blunt on the acoustic guitar, and song just has a you can almost picture the imagery with the lyrics and everything on this song. Moonlight and Samosa. I just love this song. I always these this song and Like I've Never Been Gone are on both from the same album, and the songs are both ballads and they're both lovely, and it was really tough to pick, you know, between them at first. But this song I just seemed to like just a little bit more when it came to a song from this album. Um, Man, yeah, just some great. It's a shame that we can only had to do the top 10 because there's just so many more songs that, that were on my initial list, and but you can't have them all be, in the top 10, unfortunately.
Right.
So that's what we got for number four, Moonlight and Samosa. My number three is I would say this is one of the sleeper songs of the whole Plant catalog. I've got I'm going to go back all the way to 1988, and we are going to go back to the Now and Zen. We're going to go with The Way I Feel. Hit number 46 on the US mainstream chart. I feel it's definitely the sleeper on the album, and it's just such a majestic track. And I remember when I first heard this song, it stuck out to me, and it's resonated with me ever since. I just love this song. And it's one of those songs that just you never get sick of, and it never got a lot of airplay at all, even though it did reach on the mainstream charts. Usually, when you're that high on the charts, though, that just means you didn't get a lot of airplay, or else it would have been even higher on the mainstream charts.
It's
But
more regional,
yeah, yeah,
different
that
parts of America.
we didn't get this song around here. The only songs I heard off of Now and Zen around here were the hits. and that's just the way it was. You had Tall Cool One shoved down your throat left and right.
Oh yeah.
And of course, the one other song that I mentioned, Heaven Knows, was another big one, which was my number seven, if you remember. But way I feel, I just love this one just a little bit more than Heaven Knows. And yeah, that's what I got for my number three then. The Way I Feel, number four, Moonlight and Samosa. And that now is going to bring us down to our top two songs. This is really going to get interesting now.
Yes, and you got a lot of great deep cuts here, so that's very cool. Coming in at number two, a song you just mentioned, a little over 4 minutes long. Robert Plant did not have a hand in writing this song, oddly enough. Written by keyboard player Phil Johnstone and David Barrett, whoever he is. Heaven Knows from Now and Zen,
Ah,
1988. And Plant is singing on a bed of reverb here, but I dig it anyway. I really like this song. Bonus points, the female backing vocals, Tony Halliday, the late Kirsty McCall, rest in peace, and Marie Pierre, especially on the outro of, as you mentioned before, Jimmy Page's guitar solo. When they hit the high note, heaven knows, when they hit that high note is great. Love the female backing vocals here. And Jimmy Page's solo is excellent as well. Production here is a little bit more mid 80s, even though this came out in 88, but it doesn't affect my love for the song. I think this is a great, catchy, upbeat rock song. So my number two is Heaven Knows. And my number one, you already mentioned, 4 minutes long, just about, written by Plant, Blunt, and keyboard player Woodruff from Pictures at 11, 1982, Burning Down One Side. Flame on, baby. Number 73 in the UK, 96 in Australia, number 11 in Canada. Ooh, high chart placement to the north. Number 64 in the US, like you said, and number three on the mainstream Billboard rock chart. First song I ever heard by him, still my favorite. Blunt's guitar work here, and Phil Collins on drums. Those fills and the way he hits the drums and those pow and just his ride cymbal work. It's Phil on drums, you know it, and it adds so much to the song. So the guitar playing, the song, the way it was written itself, Plant's vocals, and the drumming all add up to my favorite Robert Plant solo song, Burning Down One Side, my number one. Heaven Knows, my number two.
nice. Yeah. All right. That's the way to end it there with your final two picks. All right. It's interesting as far as that goes. I don't believe Robert even played that song live after. There it is. Let's see. Yeah, he played it once in 1990, according to this here, and then 85 would have been the last time he played it on tour. Yeah, interesting.
Damn shame. Such a great song.
So
Love it.
but that is going to take me down to my two songs to close this out for us here, and then we got some honorable mentions, I believe.
Yes.
Number two. So I'm going with Big Log, and I'm going to tell you why. Um, it's his biggest U.S. solo hit, peaking at number 20. That's hard to believe. It only peaked at number 20, and that's his highest charting single as far as a solo goes. Now, there is one song that charted higher from a side project he was in called,
The Honey Drippers.
yes, and that was Sea of Love. Number three, it reached. So, but as far as just his name on the marquee, Big Log is his biggest hit. It was a great showcase for Robbie Blunt. I will say this, I saw them play this one live on the Shaken and Stewart tour. It was the last song of the night. Robert
Wow.
encouraged everybody to sing, clap along, and I kid you not, everybody clapped from the beginning of the song until it ended, and then he left the stage. I mean, what a great, phenomenal memory that I still remember being a part of, and because we were on the floor for that one. So this was at
Cool.
our hockey arena, Memorial Auditorium. And man, oh man, we were probably about, I'd say 15, 20 rows back only. So we were really close. And man, what a great time, great tour, great time to be alive, as they say. So that was my number two, Big Log, which I just love. The video is great. And that's going to take me to number one. And this is a song that you mentioned. So I guess we're stealing each other's thunder in a way. I've got In the Mood, peaked at number 39 on the charts, like you mentioned. And an interesting thing about this song was it was the opening song on the Shaken and Stirred tour. He had a very
Okay.
unique stage setup for that tour. The stage was a long, sleek stage, and then it seemed to slope downwards. So Robert Plant started the show off in the back of the stage, and as the song grew with the beginning of the song, he opened up within the mood, and by the time it was time to sing the vocals, he's right at the edge of the stage. Just a phenomenal beginning. I still remember that like it was yesterday. And man, oh man, what memories. Certain artists seem to bring back more visual memories, more good memories, and great times. And I'll tell you, these Plant solo tours that I got to see, the Now and Zen and the Manic Nirvana, man, what these are memories that I'll never forget. These are just great times, and they really helped me, become a much bigger Robert Plant fan. And like you said that his music has changed through the years, which you knew it was gonna because look what he did each album. The first two albums are the most similar, and then the third one, Shaken and Stirred, is where he started getting experimental. He
Yep.
went a little
Left
bit,
turn.
yep, and then he kind of went more left even with Now and Zen, but it was a good left turn as opposed to Shaken and Stirred because a lot of people tend to not really gravitate towards that album as much, obviously,
Right.
for various reasons. But and then Manic Nirvana took it to a whole nother thing again. And then same with Fate of Nations, So he's always matured as an artist, which is something a lot of people don't always do. Some people will just keep on making the same old album.
ACDC.
AC/DC.
I just said the same thing.
Although I will say this about AC/DC, their albums in the mid 90s suck. I hate Ballbreaker and I hate that other one too. I'm just not a fan of them. But, for the most part, AC/DC is consistent. I guess you can say that. They're consistent for the most part. But yeah, but Robert Plant has always never done the same. I do feel that the first two albums are the closest ones. They're like very similar in style of song, and they all kind of group together. You know what albums they're from easily from the songs. But then he really, even with the Plant Page stuff, with the walking into Clarksdale, totally different.
Yep.
Uh, the Unleaded album, so many differences. And then obviously his last few solo albums have really gone to a different direction. So t tell us about some of your concert experiences with Plant, what you can recall.
I know I saw him outdoors at Jones Beach. I know I saw him inside a few times. And the only two tours I saw him on, Now and Zen and Manic Nirvana. And he threw in a few Zeppelin songs, maybe three or four, and the rest were solo songs. And I remember he didn't even start doing Zeppelin songs until the Now and Zen tour. I don't
Yep.
think he did any year before then.
Nope, you're right. He didn't. He didn't do any. During the Shaken and Stirred, he threw in the Honey Drippers. He did like a Honey Dripper set, four
That was smart.
4 to 5 songs. Yeah, yeah. And then but he kept it to those three albums, the first three albums and the Honey Drippers on the Shaken and Stirred. And if you remember, he didn't tour for Pictures at 11 because he didn't want to play Zeppelin at that point. So he felt he didn't have enough material just to tour off the one album. That's why he waited until Principal Moments to do the tour. And then obviously got lucky because Phil Collins was free.
To play with
That
it.
worked out perfect. So, because obviously 81, 82 Genesis is out there. Um, with Abacab, and they were on their tour. So he just got lucky that Phil Collins became available at the time when he started his tour.
which is
So
amazing because of the Genesis records, his solo records, his production work for Frida at the time,
he
and
was a
then with he was doing so much.
from 81 to 83, the guy I don't think he even slept.
No vacations, no time off. Philly cheesesteak. I love you though, Phil. Great drummer. It's a shame he can't drum anymore. Should
Yeah.
we move on to the honorable mention
Let's do
section,
it.
sir? All
Yeah.
right. Now, each of my three honorable mentions represents something in Plant's solo career. This first one, technically my number 13, is going to represent the later period of his solo career. And I'm choosing the 4-minute song from Mighty Rearranger from 2005, Shine It All Around.
Mm.
And this hit number 32 in the UK, number 20 still in New Zealand, baby.
Hmm.
Number 18 on the Billboard Mainstream Rock Chart, and number 11 on the Billboard AAA, the Adult Alternative Chart. So it still had chart action. So Shine It All Around represents his later solo stuff. My number 12, this represents all his collaborations that he's done since he left Led Zeppelin. Alison Krauss, and this one with Jimmy Page from the Outrider album. I am choosing the song written by Robert Plant and Jimmy Page, the only one from 1988, from Page's Outrider, 4.5 minute song, and it hit number 13 on the Billboard Mainstream Rock Chart. That's my number 12 to represent his collaborations throughout his career. My number 11 represents all his cover songs. He did a whole album of cover songs called Dreamland, but this one does not come from Dreamland. This comes from Fate of Nations, 1993, 3 minutes, 45 seconds. And I think Tim Hardin wrote the
Hmm.
original, if memory
Yep.
serves. If I Were a Carpenter, which hit number 63 in the UK and number 50 exactly in Canada. So that represents all his cover songs throughout his career because he is a restless musical spirit and he's always changing and challenging himself, changing band members because he wants to play with different people and have different musical experiences. So you could say he's a true progressive artist because he's always progressing. So Robert Plant, those are my three honorable mentions. Shine It All Around, the only one with Jimmy Page, Uncle Sloppy, as I love to call him, endearingly, not meant insultingly, not meant in a bad manner. And If I Were a Carpenter and You Were My Lady.
So why do you call him Uncle Sloppy? Let's get the message story behind it on that.
Just an old joke that my friends and I made up. We used to call him that at work. Because just live, when he plays live sometimes, Jimmy Page back in the day, maybe because he was a little out of it, let's say, he was certain shows he was great and certain shows he wasn't as stellar. So he developed the nickname Uncle Sloppy. And sometimes when he started playing super fast, it was a little off kilter. But other nights, the band were just on fire. And there's zillions of bootlegs out there
Oh
that
yeah.
you can find them on. Because we used to play a lot of Zeppelin boots on CD at the old record store back in the day.
I think, and if you listen to those bootlegs too, listen for Dazed and Confused because that's the song that they used to stretch it out. I mean, some nights it was a 20-minute song, some nights it was a 35.
Yeah,
So that song would
crazy.
tell you if it was a sloppy night or not. Perfect. Okay. And just getting back to your choices, I would say Shine It All Around is probably the best song on that album. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I love The Only One, definitely, but I didn't have it on my list. But If I Were a Carpenter almost cracked my list. It got taken off. It was probably the last song I booted off before I made my final selections. I don't know
Okay.
why. Maybe because I just felt maybe I didn't want to have a cover on it. Um, I guess that's the true reason. But I love that song. That's the greatest version. I just love that song. Don't get me wrong. It's one of my favorites. So my honorable mentions were all already mentioned.
Oh,
So they're quite
interesting.
honorable. Yeah. So my number 13, we're going to go with Little by Little from Shaken and Stirred. And you already told all about that. Number 12, we've got Far Post, the B-side to Big Log in the US, not the
Yes.
UK. But the one thing you didn't mention, and this is something that maybe people might not know, but it was on a movie soundtrack called White Nights, the White Nights soundtrack.
That's
So
right.
that was actually the first place you could actually buy it because unless you had the single, because at the time, they only had cassettes out then, and when that album came out, for the Big Log, and eventually, when he did all the remasters, he ended up putting it on one of the albums. I think it was the first one,
Pictures at
Pictures at
11.
11. Yeah, it's one of the bonus tracks on the
Right, because Phil
remastered.
plays drums on it. That's why.
Yeah. So, yeah, great song. I definitely agree with you on what you said about that song. It's just a phenomenal song. Just listen to it. If you never heard the song, all I'm going to say is just give it a solid listen, and I tell you what, I think you're going to love it. I just wish it would have been on the album. It would have made it a much stronger album, and if it would have kicked something else off that maybe wasn't as strong. Number 11, my final honorable mention, the Cozy Powell led Slow Dancer, baby. That's how close it came to making my top 10. Just missed it by that much. Um,
Sorry about that, Chief.
yep, about the most Led Zeppelin sounding song on the album, I feel. That and Big Burning Down One Side were the two big ones for me on the album, and yeah, just a great song, great choices, and man, I guess we did have quite a few more songs to get that we had on the same air, but we did have
I
a lot of,
told you,
but we did have a lot of deep cuts that which were good. At least the deep cuts that we had, other than the far post, were different.
which is a
So
good
not
thing.
yeah, not too bad. Anything in closing on Robert Plant here?
Check out his solo career. Each album has good songs. Even the most recent one with Carry Fire, is that the title?
Yep,
I've heard that. That has good stuff as well. But I just love the 80s and 90s stuff.
yeah, yeah.
But he does have good stuff after that. Even Lullaby and the Ceaseless Roar. Ceaseless Roar. That's a really good record. We used to play that in the shop.
Interesting title, actually. No doubt. And then, of course, you mentioned the Mighty Rearranger, which got a lot of critical acclaim, actually. I think where Plant went wrong was 93. I mean, obviously, he did the unleaded thing and got together with Jimmy Page for a couple tours for the Page Plant thing. But he never made another album again until 2002 for Dreamland, and it was a bunch of covers.
Yeah.
I just really feel that's kind of where, a lot of people just, yeah, and it kind of, I think I would have loved to seen that lineup with Phil Johnstone and Chris Blackwell just stay together for at least one more album. I really miss that lineup for sure. Having to seen it, that was the first lineup, well, the second lineup. I did get to see Robbie Blunt on the Shaken and Stirred tour,
I never did.
which luckily I did. That was one of my first shows, and it's just a shame because we did lose Phil Johnstone back in the middle of the pandemic back in 2021, and it's so weird was that there wasn't much mentioned anywhere about it. I mean, I heard about it maybe about 6 months after it happened,
Hmm.
and he was only 63. He said he died after a few years of bad health, but nobody ever really,
I
I
didn't
never
even think
seen
I
I
knew that.
yeah, I never heard of any mention of anything by Robert about it. A lot of times when somebody's band member passes from a previous band where they had a lot of success, you would see somebody say, "Oh, I'm so sorry to hear about, what happened to Phil or whatever." And it was just weird. I never heard anything. And that's one weird thing too. You don't really hear anything about anything from anybody in Robert Plant's band and I know they lost
Ooh.
a few members, I believe, over time.
I know one person who played with Robert Plant who's big on YouTube. Drummer Andy Edwards played on the Fate of Nations tour, probably some of the record too, because he used different members on that record. And Andy Edwards talks about Plant on his YouTube channel. And he was also the drummer for about a 5 year span for one of my favorite British prog rock bands, IQ. Andy Edwards has a good YouTube channel. Check it out. And he's
Yeah.
super opinionated. He's a very opinionated guy. He might rub some people the wrong way, but he does speak his mind. You got to admire that.
Yeah, I don't think he played on the album, but you're right. I think he was the touring drummer because by then
Okay,
Chris Blackwell left. And it's interesting if you look back on the credits for Fate of Nations, Phil Johnstone played on a handful of tracks, and um, Doug Boyle plays guitar on just two tracks,
because
which
Francis Dunnery plays on the record, who used to be in a British prog band called It Bites, really good band. And
yeah, the
Francis Dunnery is a great guitar player.
uh-huh.
I think he
Yeah.
plays on "Calling to You," which is on my was on my larger list. I really like "Calling to You," "Calling on You."
Calling
"Calling
to
to
You.
You." That's it. Yeah, "Calling
Yep.
to You," which has I think violin work from Nigel Kennedy, if memory serves. Plays some
Yeah.
really great
Yep.
electric violin work on that
Nice
song.
nice call on
"Calling,"
that. Yep.
yeah, "Calling to You" is a great song. It was on my larger list, just didn't make the cut.
Yeah, it's interesting. If you look at the credits for that album, Fate of Nations, just to give everybody the rundown, it pretty much is Plant and Johnstone, Plant and Blackwell. Um, Charlie Jones has a credit on a couple songs too. Now, Charlie Jones did play on the majority of the album, the bass player.
Okay,
He played on about 10 tracks altogether. And it's weird because Chris Blackwell plays on one song on the drums, and that's Promised
hmm.
Land. And he did write a handful of the songs on here. Chris Blackwell's got about four writing credits, it looks like, roughly four to five. And
how many how many songs is Francis Dunnery on? Does he play guitar on?
th two, he plays guitar on two
That's it.
songs. We're talking "Come Into My Life" and "Promised Land."
Oh, he's not on "Calling to You." Okay, I thought he
Yeah,
was.
yeah. Let me see. That's Kevin McMichael.
From late guy from the Cutting Crew. Okay.
Yeah, he played on the majority of the album, Kevin. 1 through 7, 9 through 12. So it's just weird how, it sounded like they had the album pretty much written, and then for whatever reason, all those guys ended up leaving except for Phil Johnstone. He was the only one, him and Charlie Jones were the only ones I remember on the tour. They
And
came to
Fate of Nations, it's like it's for the CD era in '93 when it came out. It has a lot of songs. It was the longest solo record up to that point. And that's
Mhm.
sort of when he started getting more into the world music theme,
Yeah.
that he wanted to explore music from other nations. No pun intended, other areas.
But I will say this album definitely give it a listen. I was closer
Is
listen if you haven't before because I did the same thing. I glossed over certain songs and just kind of focused on the ones that I remember from the radio or the ones that I was familiar with. But went back when I was doing this for the thing. I went listened through each of the main albums. I didn't really touch too much on the later albums because I just know there was nothing that was going to top the songs that I picked from the earlier albums.
same
And I
here.
did see, that there was a couple songs there I go, "Oh, this is a lot better than I remember it." So, I think as you get older and stuff on certain albums that you maybe didn't pay much attention to in the past, sometimes you give them another chance and you'll see that yeah, this stuff is really good. I don't know why it never caught my attention before. Maybe because there's no one making music like this anymore. And when you go back and listen to it, it just sounds like it takes you back to that moment in time where, you feel comfortable. And they always say music is, the soundtrack of life, and you can
Yes,
usually
it is.
place a lot of your life by the songs that were out at certain times in your life or certain people you were acquainted with, certain girlfriends, all that kind of stuff, and it's very
Your job.
yeah, yeah, definitely. And just great though. I tell you, Robert Plant's one of the greatest artists of all time. I mean, he's in the greatest arguably the greatest band of all time, Led Zeppelin. I mean, who would have thought he'd go on and basically create a whole nother career for himself where he's got all these other great songs on top of all the Led Zeppelin songs. It's
And
just
Jimmy Page is basically absent. He hasn't done that much work since Led Zeppelin broke up.
Yeah, I mean, the highlight of his career after that, other than the two albums with Robert Plant, was his 1993 album with David Coverdale. And that got a lot of good reviews, and there's a lot of good songs on that album. But like you said, he hasn't really been around much since then, but he's been working on the Led Zeppelin catalog. He did a lot of work bringing all that stuff back and giving us some great quality remasters and some great videos, concert videos. How the West was won. There was a lot of good stuff, and that ties you up when you got to work on stuff like that.
But
But I think,
still, no new music really. Just he did
yeah,
2 albums with The Firm, which are spotty, but there's some really good songs on them.
yeah,
And Outrider has some good tracks as well. Wasting My Time, the first single from Outrider, is really good with John Miles, if memory serves, on vocals. And I saw Jimmy Page on that tour at the Nassau Coliseum on the
oh wow,
Outrider tour. And he did In My Time of Dying from Led Zeppelin. That was great. I think that was the highlight of the show for me.
who was singing on that tour for him?
John Miles was
Oh, he was
singing.
on the tour. Okay. Because if you remember, there was a couple different guys singing on that
Right.
Outrider album. I believe Chris Farlow, I believe.
Maybe it was him. It's been, wow. The tour's almost 40 years ago,
Yeah.
37 years ago, that tour,
Yeah, Chris
1988.
Farlow. Let's see. Chris Farlow sang on the three songs on the second side. Miles sang on Wasting My Time and Want to Make Love. Robert Plant sang on the only one. So there's six
Right.
songs with vocals, and the other three are instrumental on that album. Tony Franklin played bass on track one. Obviously, he was from The Firm.
The Fretless Monster. What a
Yeah.
player.
And interesting enough, look who's on drums for a couple tracks here.
Jason
Yeah, he played on most of the album, and then Barrymore Barlow, who
from
actually
Jethro
played,
Tull.
yeah, who actually played on Principle of Moments two tracks.
That's right.
Interesting, interesting, interesting. See, we're gone full circle here, folks. But we're giving you like a whole rundown on these guys.
Yeah.
We could talk forever on Robert Plant and Jimmy Page and Led Zeppelin, and it'd be like a 3 hour special show. But we don't want to bore you guys to death. But
And if I can give a hint,
mhm.
next month there's going to be a very special show with more special guests on another famous singer. And we'll leave it there. A little tease.
Yes, that's going to be another fun one. Yes. All right, sounds good. All right, well, appreciate you coming aboard for this one here. And glad we were able to, man, talk Robert Plant. I mean,
For a while. Yeah.
the memories of this, especially seeing that concert from 1988 again, seeing that on YouTube, man, it just, what memories does that bring me back? Because the weird thing is, the angle of the video almost looks like exactly where I sat to see the show. It's very
It's
eerie.
funny. There was
Yeah.
someone by you that filmed it.
Yep. Yep. And I have no idea who it is, but I'm so glad that they did, and I'm so glad that they posted it. Because that really brought back so many great memories there for sure. That was the third time I seen Plant. So I got to see Robert Plant, I think 5 times in all. I did see him
Yeah, that's more than me.
once on the Fate of Nations, obviously, and then once on a later tour. I believe it was the one with I saw it in Toronto, and that would be the Band of Joy one. Yeah, 2010.
That's a good album. It's another good later album. Band of Joy has some good stuff. We used to play that a lot at the shop.
Yeah, that one is definitely probably out of after like Fate of Nations, that's my next favorite album.
I like Mighty Rearranger a lot too. Between those two, I think those are my two favorites from the later period. But they all have good songs on it, good performances. He gets interesting younger band members to play with him that bring something new to his sound. So I love his restless spirit. He's always reaching and searching, and he's a huge record collector too.
Yes, he goes
I
into
heard a
record
story that he
stores.
was in Manhattan. I knew a guy who ran a record store in Manhattan, and he said Robert Plant used to come in all the time and search through the records, and especially the 45s. He loved rare things to find things he didn't have in his collection. He loved to add to it. So,
Well, I think
Robert Plant.
yeah, that's the thrill of it though. I mean, you could easily go online and, you know, on eBay and find what you want, but it's not the same as going into a record store and trying to find that hidden
Yep.
treasure or something that maybe you're not familiar with or never heard of. It's like, walking out with some treasure, you
Yeah,
know.
finding it in the wild, as they say.
Yep, yep. And then you know more better than anybody because you've worked in a record store and
Oh yeah,
you
for
got to
over
see
three
ex
decades.
got
Yeah.
to experience it. Did you ever see Robert Plant walk in your store?
No, there was a lot of the famous people who came into the store. They always came in on my days off. Like Dee
That's your
Snider
luck.
from Twisted Sister once came in, and it was a Wednesday, which was my day off.
Oh
So
wow, man, no luck there.
exactly. But before we wrap it up, I just want to say my YouTube channel, Cretin Classics. I just put up two new videos. Thank you. One, speaking of great singers, Rob Halford, Judas Priest. Some new friends of mine and I picked out our favorite Judas Priest songs. So look for top 12 tunes of Judas Priest
Mm.
on Cretin Classics. And also, Peter Kerr from Rock Daydream Nation came onto my channel. We did our favorite In Excess songs, top 12 tunes from In Excess. So check those shows out. And thank you for having me on again, Joseph. I appreciate it.
All right, very welcome, and we'll be seeing you in a little while down the road here for our next episode. All right, until
In the
then,
small
everybody,
house.
in the small house. Signing off.